wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood, and this week I am doing the podcast on my own as we've got a special interview with Sherrie Laryse. Sherrie is a writer, mentor and business owner who lives her life with growing self-awareness. She's a goal maker and achiever and lives by the guiding mantra that growth occurs at the border of support and challenge. For Sherrie, life is a fluid gift that reshapes itself as we change our perceptions. This is what gives rise to Sherrie's grounded wisdom and ultimate inspiration to others. Sherrie lives in Sydney, Australia, and inherited an 8-year-old cat that became her pseudo-child. Sherrie writes at sherrie.com.au. Welcome, Sherrie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we have you here on the podcast for the very big, loaded, heart-wrenching, heart-expanding topic of the all-consuming road to motherhood, which is really one for our audience who are, have had a challenging road to motherhood, are still on that road, or who are kind of not even there yet but are wondering what's going to unfold for them. And we really wanted you on the podcast because we shared your blog a couple of months ago on your story, and it really resonated with a lot of our tribe because it so deeply touched that vulnerable point that a lot of women hit in terms of their own fertility journey and what the path to motherhood looks like, and the reality of something that might, depending on your experiences, seem so easy for some people, but yet for others it's not. And that's certainly been my experience throughout. I have 2 children now, but it certainly has not been an easy road for me to reach this point, and the podcast definitely shares that. So I'd love you to explain a little bit about your version of who you are after I've read your bio, and really about what this has meant for you. Take us back to that, that point at which you decided, yep, I'm ready to be a mum, and how it's unfolded from there.
Well, so, funny that you say that point where I decided I was ready to be a mum, because the interesting thing I found along this road is that I had that feeling that I always knew I was going to be a mum. And even growing up, I remember looking at my mum and the way she used to do certain things, and even to when I was a little kid and I would be having a tantrum or about something, and she'd say to me, "You're tired, aren't you?" And, of course, I was tired. Now I see other kids having tantrums because they're tired, and I think, yeah, you're tired, aren't you? But my mum saying that to me at the time used to drive me bananas. And I remember thinking as a little kid, I'm never going to say that to my kids because that upsets me so much. So even growing up as a little one, I saw myself becoming a mum one day. It was never a conscious decision. And when I met my now husband, we fell in love pretty damn quickly. And because it was so super fast, we both lay in bed one night and asked those questions of when you really need to get to know each other quickly and you want to know everything about them. And, we were asking all the questions of, do you like crunchy or soft peanut butter? And do you use a hard or a soft toothbrush? And do you scrunch or fold? And,
all those really important questions.
Things that you need to know about somebody when you really want to know them. And then, of course, the other question that was, do you want to have kids? And he was a very clear, no, I don't. And I was a very clear, yes, I do. And in spite of that, we decided to fall in love anyway and just see what happens. And I was well aware that people change. I was also well aware that not everybody can have kids. And, I have a couple of friends that can't. So I kind of had that in my head as well, that I didn't want to let my potential husband go for something that I didn't know if it could happen yet. So
that must have been a huge decision to make, though. If you so much wanted that and he so much didn't.
It didn't feel like a big decision at the time because denial is a wonderful thing. And while it felt like a conscious decision of, no, that's okay, we'll do it anyway, in the back of my head was a little, I know I'm going to be a mum. I've known it all my life. So that was always there. And that was far stronger than my conscious decision saying, let's do it anyway. all of this is unfolded to me. You know, it's really easy to look back and see it all now.
Yeah.
But even there was a lady who I spoke to one day, and I was, 6 months into this relationship with this guy that I was totally in love with. And she said to me, oh, well, how old are you? You're going to want to start to, get married and have kids. And I said, actually, he doesn't want kids. And she gave me an earful, a big talking to about not going with the wrong guy because I would live with regrets for the rest of my life.
Wow.
So then I had that as well to, consciously process and decide, firstly, you're giving me advice based on your life experiences. And she was about 50, so she was speaking through her pain, not necessarily about my experience. So I decided to thank her for her opinion and her input and, gave her a big hug and walked away and thought, no, this is my life. This is my man. This is my husband. I know it. I'm keeping him. And as it turned out, he turned around one day and said, okay, let's do it. So, of course, that was me. I was instantly a mum in my head.
Wow.
But, 6 months in and I still wasn't pregnant, and we went and both had all the tests and made sure we were both fine. Then I tried everything. Like I went through all of the natural routes of acupuncture. You probably had all this in your blog anyway, but anyway, I went through every natural path that there was. I had the far infrared saunas. I did a complete body detox. I got rid of all my heavy metals. I even had my amalgams taken out
Wow.
and composite fillings replacing them. I did the works. We went to IVF or an IVF clinic, and they were ones that, did the test to make sure everything was okay, and they did one test and they flushed your tubes to make sure there's nothing stuck in there. And they did say to me that normally not normally, but commonly people fall pregnant just after this procedure because it kind of stimulates everything. So the next month I was late, and it was such a tease on my body.
Yeah.
And the amount of months that I held on to, yes, this is it because I'm late, or yes, this is it because I feel sick.
And how long was this going on for you for?
July this year was 4 years.
Wow.
To be honest, I feel like I've come a full circle now. And as of last week, my husband and I started conversations of, do we go back onto contraception? Like, that's how full circle I've come.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been a really big road. But I mean, in the process of that, I also had to let the mother in me, that version of me that I held, I had to let that go. And that, in all honesty, was a mourning process. As in, I was mourning. And that was heartbreaking, and that was really vulnerable, and that was me with the image of myself that I knew who I was through to the core, what I was going to be when I grew up. I didn't know what job I was going to do, but I knew I was going to be a mum. I knew I was going to have a special relationship with my kids the way I do with my parents. And, I mean, to be honest, my parents are two of my best friends. We're so close. We have a really close family. And I knew I was going to have that with my kids as well, because I was brought up that way to have those relationships. So I was mourning the version of myself. I was mourning my own kids that I was never going to meet.
It's just such a, I mean, I don't even think words can do justice to the, I guess I know pain in that, transformation. Yeah, and those years, 4 years really of all consuming, because, it's kind of a joke, like, a lot of people sort of, they decide, well, we're not trying is kind of how people start trying for having a child, right? Yeah. It's like, well, I'm not trying, but I'm not trying.
You're not using contraception.
Yeah, you're trying.
And what do you mean trying? I've never really understood trying.
Yeah.
Does that mean you don't have sex other than the 2 days a month when you're ovulating, and that means you're trying?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
And I think, for so many women, certainly it was in my case, it was, you very quickly go from not trying to actively trying, and why the fuck isn't this happening? That was certainly my journey. And I know so many of my friends and other women that I know it very quickly becomes, why isn't this happening? You know, everything else in my life I can control. Why can't I control this? You know, I'm doing all of the right things.
Plants reproduce. Plants do it, you know.
There's an element of, you know, failure attached to that, isn't there?
100%. I have all the naturally, perfectly working elements of a female body. You know, I've got the hips, I've got the boobs, I've got the ovaries, I've got everything in perfect natural working order. You know, I had a husband in a beautifully loving relationship. I had a job that, well, you know, a business that we could put staff on. And then, I mean, even now I work 1 day a week. I set up my whole life ability so I could become a mother. Now, the beauty of that means I only work 1 day a week. It's the time I do a lot of yoga. And I read
fabulous.
and I have a whole lot of fun. And I have this beautiful life that I've set up now that doesn't have kids in it. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if it will one day or it won't, but where I did get through, and I guess coming back to the original question of, you know, the tools I used and the process that got me through this was I've always been really fascinated with psychology and the way our heads work and the way that dictates the way our body works. And so I started working on my self-head, and I wanted to know throughout this process what kind of impact my thoughts were having and if they were making or breaking this, you know, decision of me falling pregnant. Part of my trying was hypnotherapy as well to make sure I had myself on side. But anyway, that was, I did a lot.
But you must have been, I mean, you know, through this, the layers of yourself that you must have peeled back would have been enormous, you know, in terms of getting to know yourself.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I feel like I was peeling myself back or
piling
adding
stuff
layers
on.
on.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of both, because I'm certainly a much stronger and bigger person than I was before. So in a way I kind of challenged that whole onion theory where you know, personal development is like peeling layers of an onion, because I honestly feel like I started as a little baby onion core and every experience, every event, every time another friend fell pregnant, and every time somebody told me to hurry up, stop waiting, you're not getting any younger.
Gosh.
Oh,
man, like cuts like a knife.
Oh, yeah. This one particular friend who told me she was pregnant and then told me to hurry up, why was I waiting? And, you know, just gave me a little slap on the bum like it was all funny, and I just had to turn around and I couldn't even respond to her because I was about to burst into tears. So I just had to ignore the comment, and I don't know if she thought I was rude. I never really went back and asked, but it was either ignore her or just burst into tears and become a blubbery mess, and I was in public and I really needed to keep myself together. But, yeah, those situations, they happen. And, one time I went to pick up my brother's kids from school, and my brother got there at the same time to pick them up. And as soon as I got there, I didn't realise how big an impact that was making on me, that I was going to pick up kids from school and I rocked up the same age as all the other parents and nobody could tell the difference. Nobody knew I wasn't a real mother.
Yeah, wow.
And I didn't realise how deep that feeling went of walking through a school to pick up kids that quite frankly look like me. And then when I saw my brother there, I melted, I broke, I shattered, and I realised that, okay, he's the real parent and I'm not, and I just felt like such a fraud. And I went back to my car and I bawled. So, you know, these little things that...
Those triggers are everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. They're everywhere. And things that you think aren't a big deal just cut straight through to what really matters to you at the time, which is you're not a mother. So, anyway, the way I worked on myself... I did a lot of things. One thing that hit home to me in a big way was I broke down what it was in motherhood that I thought I wanted, that I felt was missing in my life. Essentially what motherhood meant to me, I broke down all the characteristics. So that was things like picking up kids from school, nurturing, feeding, putting to bed, getting up in the middle of the night for them, cleaning up when they're sick, cleaning up after them in the kitchen, washing clothes. You know, I broke down everything that I thought motherhood was, you know, growing up, having really intimate conversations with somebody, you know, somebody close in your family and all of that. And then I looked in my life where all of those traits were being represented and where I was picking up kids from school, which in my case is often going down to my business and picking up my staff and taking them home because it's raining and they're on their bicycle or things like that. So, and, you know, when I did that, my secondhand cat that I inherited came home and it was sick and it had diarrhea and I had to clean up my cat. So I'm there like with gloves on with a little cloth and tea tree oil in a hot warm bath, cleaning my cat, dry reaching with poo smells. I'm thinking, I'm a parent. I'm doing this parenting thing.
And this is really, and this is that principle, we talk a lot about this in our Loathing to Loving program, which is that nothing is missing, it's just changing form. And the reason why you're not seeing it is because you're looking for it in a different form. You know, you can't always choose the form. There. Wow.
It was all there. It was not how it looked in the brochure. But when I looked around, it was all represented. Now, the one thing, the nurturing really stuck out to me. And the nurturing and the inspiring, I always imagined a little someone growing up and I could feed them all my thoughts and all the education that I'd learned about psychology and human behaviour, just the way we work in general. And I really wanted to pass that on to somebody so they could grow up without being as fucked up as we are. Imagine knowing all this stuff when you're 5. Yeah. You know, and going through life seeing clearly. And I always imagined raising kids like that and just inspiring them to live a life with open eyes and an open heart. So those things really stuck out to me. And while throughout all of my jobs, and I've had a lot of management positions, I had a lot of people calling me inspirational. It felt really warm and fuzzy, and I could tick the box saying, yes, I've inspired people along the way. That really stood out for me, that of something I wanted more of. So I went and I found a program where you can volunteer, and there's a program, it's in Sydney and Melbourne. It's called Sister to Sister, and it is mentoring teenage girls who have been up with trauma. So these are girls who desperately need a strong female role model.
So this is really the two things that you still felt you hadn't quite covered, the nurturing and inspiring. This is the avenue in which you can be that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the funny thing was, I met the girl that they had paired me with, Eloise, and I have to say I fell in love instantly, probably because I saw her as a version of me at that age. And the stuff she's going through, I'm sitting there thinking, you're a cookie cutter of me. Like and you know, as you and I both know, we are reflections. You see what is within you, and I just saw her and fell in love with pieces of me that I had disowned when I was that age. So, I mean, so interesting, all of it is.
I really see how you say that, you know, you've almost become full circle, because as you've been able to see that none of those parts were missing, you feel much more integrated and at some level, I guess, at peace with the form in which it's all coming in. But this must be, you know, a big leap for so many women to make, and I guess also yourself on low days or on days when you still have that picture of what you always dreamed of, I suppose.
Yep. I think it's only in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks that I really feel like I've closed the door. And that's like, I feel like if it happened now, I would almost have to think it through before I could get a big smile on my face.
And interestingly, when you first, you know, your husband said, yes, I'm ready to have a baby, was there some elation there from you? Were you elated?
100%.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, so to the ceiling.
Yeah. So in the podcast we talk a lot about, if people have listened enough, we talk a lot about universal laws and how the universe is naturally going to equilibrate us. And certainly I see that with my miscarriage that I had with my first pregnancy, there was definitely elation there. There was, you know, pride before the fall kind of scenario.
Yeah.
and as brutal as that is, you know, sometimes it can be that the universe will naturally equilibrate us, and that was. I did wonder when you said that, you know, this dream that you'd always had. I suppose you always had this seed of hope that he would come around. I mean, if for him to come around,
that he wouldn't.
Yeah. So he's kind of him saying, yes, I'm ready to do this. Every fibre of your being is just kind of soaring through the, you know, stratosphere.
As soon as he said yes, I became pregnant there and then.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. But I also realise now that I really appreciate going that high up and then dropping that far down, because dropping that far down really made me search inside for what I really want. And I honestly, with every piece of my being, I honestly feel like if I had my own child, I would be ripping myself off and ripping the world off of what I can contribute, because right now or at least during that process, I had so much yearning to have a child. And as soon as I mourned that concept, I moved on and realised that I could be that mother to more than just my own children, and I could go out and, starting with this mentoring program, I mean, I've got the one girl that I was paired with, but there's 30 people in the program, and I'm going back and doing it next year, and I really want to become more and more involved in that kind of thing. I want to get more in schools. I am going down, I'm doing a presentation to a sales team of 80 people next month. And honestly, it's all about this same sort of thing. It's all about the way we think and how it impacts us. And I really feel like now I can impact so many more people than I could if I just had my own 1 or 2 children.
I love this, because you actually say this in the one of the final paragraphs of the blog. You say, our challenges aren't necessarily our obstacles. They can be gifts to carry us to bigger visions for ourselves, bigger lives, bigger contributions. I feel all of my life experience has accrued to qualify me for this role if I dared to think so grand about myself. I thought it was going to play out in children of my own, but I now appreciate that it's so much more than that. I feel as if I just woke up to my true purpose in this life, to work with hundreds of people trying to figure out their way.
And I honestly feel if I had children, I wouldn't be doing that.
Wow.
I honestly feel like I would be ripping myself off, and I would be cutting myself short, and I would be looking down at one little person and putting everything into them, as opposed to a contribution that I can make on such a grand scale. And in all honesty, I don't even know the enormity of where this is going yet, but I know it's big.
Wow.
And every week something new happens and it grows bigger, which is why I say I don't even know where it's going.
Which is beautiful, because that's
so organic.
But that's really the universe reflecting the alignment with which you have now, with yourself co-creating with the grand design.
Which is why I've just come around to maybe we're ready to start contraception again, because there is such a giant road ahead of me, and I am so excited about it that I don't want to let anything stop me now. I'm full steam ahead on this other road to nurture, inspire, and mother thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. I don't have time to just focus on one, but I don't want to neglect that one in exchange for the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So you're really calling yourself to sit in ownership of this unconventional form of motherhood for you.
Yeah. Which these days, call it environmental factors, diet, whatever it may be. There's a lot of people having trouble to have children these days, and IVF is a massive, profitable industry these days.
It's a business.
If you're looking for somewhere to invest your money into, the IVF world would be a good one.
Yeah.
I personally chose not to go down that route because of my own internal feelings that everything happens for a reason, and that this was my journey. And and other people, not saying that you're bypassing your journey if you have IVF, because that's somebody else's journey and that's the process they need to take themselves on. But for me, I knew it wasn't my journey. And I knew I needed to stay true to that.
I just love the wisdom with which you speak of this, because I know, having spoken to you at various times, that, the blubbering mess that you would have found yourself in at some of those really dark moments could not have foreseen the person that's come out the other end. And I guess what I see that as doing, as giving hope to other women who may be on the journey or maybe haven't even started, but perhaps an element of them fears, oh, what if it takes too long, or what if it doesn't happen? It's just trusting that whatever needs to be will be, and that it might not be exactly what you want, but if you're willing to, you know, follow the breadcrumbs and go deeply into yourself, that there is beauty there, because that's obviously, you know, really what it's been for you. And a great book on this actually is it's called The Way of the Fertile Soul, and it's by a woman called Randine Lewis, who's an integrative doctor and a Chinese medicine practitioner, and she talks a lot about that, you know, women who are hell-bent on becoming a mother in the traditional sense, but in fact find that, you know, whether the child comes or not, that fertility journey for them was their breaking open to their essence, really, you know, and the child was or wasn't a byproduct of that, but ultimately it took them deeply within themselves to their own pain in order to flourish out the other end.
So somebody said something interesting to me once, and it was when I was with my boyfriend years ago, and I was thinking about breaking up with him, but I really wanted a baby, and I was really into him. And I remember saying to somebody, but you know what, he would be a really good and she said to me, be careful, Sherrie, because if you want to become a mother so badly, somebody might become a child to you. And it really hit home. And I walked away from that and remembered that my grandfather had a stroke and became a child. My grandmother had dementia and became a child. And I thought, it's a really good point. If you are so desperate to be a mother, it could come in a different form. It's not necessarily the way you see in the shiny, glossy brochure. Yeah,
it's so interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like Tony Robbins, you know, he wanted to be big, you know, and yeah, he is that, like in terms of profile, but he's also has a disease that makes him physically big, you know, so it's, he's got like some kind of condition and that's why he's actually larger than life. Like it's actually a hormonal thing.
Right.
So he, you know, he didn't add quite enough detail to his grand vision, you know, that said you know, it's all in the detail. Oh, well, thank you. This is just big, you know, big stuff that you've shared here, and I love how much you've been vulnerable with us, first in sharing your blog, but also in, I guess, delving a little bit deeper into what that's looking like for you now. I'd love to
thing there, because the fact that it is such a big thing for females in general, and if there's anybody like me out there who grew up as a female and thought it was just their natural born right to become a mother one day, I just want to add that having gone down this journey and done the 360 of every emotion, thought, tears, happy, everything that you can go through, get in touch. I mean, I do consultations with people, and yes, they are paid consultations, but if somebody just wants to have a chat, and if they just want to email or call or something, just email or call. You know, you don't get charged for that, but I know how lonely this road can be.
I love that you've shared that.
It's, you don't have to go through it alone, and I thought I did, but that was because everybody around me either was a mother or was pregnant or, you know, for whatever reason was not in my position, anybody else in my situation. But if there's anybody that is listening that is in my situation, don't feel like you need to go through it alone, because it's scary. So, get in touch.
So, your website, yes, it's www.sherrie.com.au, which we'll have in the show notes as well. I wanted to ask you our rapid-fire questions, which is, what is the book that has been most influential for you? So this might be a book that you gift the most to other people, or, you know, if it might be the book that if you could give to every woman in the world, what would it be?
The Psychology of Influence. That is by Robert Cialdini. And I read that years and years and years ago, but it was the first book I read that really hit home for me, that what we think subconsciously makes decisions on our behalf without our conscious knowing. So it really it opened it up for me. It opened up a whole new bag of questions and a new area to study, but that's really what started me off. And it goes through real life examples of how that makes a difference and how our subconscious really does drive us.
I love that.
Which is why, and I know you read my recent blog, The Melon Programmer, it's so important to understand that our subconscious drives us and to actually understand what's in there. So, but anyway, the Psychology of Influence was the first book I read that opened my eyes to that. So that's definitely on the reading list, recommended reading list.
Thank you. And can you recall an epic fail in your life and walk us through what the aftermath or the learnings have been for you?
I didn't fall pregnant.
Your epic fail.
That's been my epic fail. Yeah, and that's just there's no point saying all of that again.
Yeah, but
that's definitely been my biggest failure. Everything else, things that felt like a failure at the time were really not that epic, even though they felt at the time. But 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years later, I've realised that was perfect, because if that did happen, I would have gone down that road, and that would have been bad.
It's an incredible joining of the dots, isn't it, when you start to do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you just get utter appreciation for everything, all of the steps in your life that made you who you are. As opposed to thinking that was so bad and I wish that didn't happen that way, you realise that happened that way for a reason, and I'm really thankful.
It's wisdom, isn't it? It's wisdom right there. If you could have a billboard on any major highway in the world, what would it say?
So you threw this question at me before, and I've been thinking about it since, and there's so many things that I would want to put up there. But, the whole, love yourself and all of that, it just doesn't hit home, even though, honestly, I think love yourself is the ultimate message that I could give. I think without a 2-day intense explanation of what that means, both words, explaining them, I don't really think that's going to do anything. So then I was thinking, if it's got to be something while people are driving past and they've got, 3-second goldfish attention spans, it's got to be something snappy. So then it's got to be something more like, sort your shit out or get your shit together, life's short. And then I was thinking, well, that doesn't help, because unless you know how to do that, that doesn't mean anything either. And then I was thinking, okay, call me.
1-800.
Yeah.
Although it wouldn't be free though, would it?
Life is about the questions you ask, right? And if you're not getting the answers you want, you need to ask different questions. And one thing that I have worked out in all of the studies that I have done is that I now have those right questions to help people resolve their shit, resolve their emotional baggage, help them clear out things that are blocking them, or in my case, realise that it's not what was blocking me from falling pregnant, it was that I have a much bigger plan than that. So I really feel like I've got some juicy questions now that help people to see things in a different perspective. So, so on the billboard, I put call me.
I like it. Another nice plug in there too. It's good. Good one.
Indeed it.
Yeah, you're definitely on a journey. I just love it. I've been loving watching this unfold for you, and I'm really inspired by the fact that you've come to the point where you say for you it's been almost a 360. And I guess, what you might tell that woman of 4 years ago, what you now know, what that journey's brought you.
I tell her to call me.
Call your future self.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a bit of watch this space. So I think if we have this chat again in 12 months' time, I'm actually really interested, excited, inspired to know what this conversation will sound like.
Yeah.
Pretty juicy, I think.
Watch this space.
Very
Love
much
it.
so.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for the invite.
Really, really appreciate it. Well, I just loved what Sherrie was able to share with us there about her own journey. There's certainly elements in that rung true for me on the path to pregnancy and, motherhood, in all its various forms. A lot of the concepts that we touched on, we've explored much more deeply in other podcasts, so please do go back and explore those. And certainly if you are compelled to transform your own story and your challenges, then please do consider joining us for our next run of the Loathing to Loving program, which starts on the 7th of November. It's a 5-week program which really takes you through the principles that we discuss in the podcast, like the ones that Sherrie and I just talked about there, and various other ones to really help you get back into alignment, create greater connection with yourself, all of those things. And of course, if you really feel called to, please get in touch with Sherrie. She is amazing and really living this journey, and her skill set is quite remarkable in terms of us helping you to ask those quality questions. So her website again is www.sherrie.com.au, and it's Sherrie spelled SHERRIE. And until next week, when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.